The Toronto Blue Jays have found a recipe for success, and it's pretty simple. All they got to do is get a lead in the fifth inning and turn it over to that dominant bullpen. It's not an overstatement that they have been the best group in the MLB, and it's safe to say that because they really have been. And if you look at the underlying numbers, the Jays have been dominant in that regard. So this next crucial part of their schedule is going to really decide their season, and they got their fate in their own hands. So we'll break that down and much more on this episode of Jays Digest. What's up, Jays fans? I'm your host, Peter Vryonis, alongside host Nick Gosse. And the Blue Jays got a massive win yesterday against the Baltimore Orioles. Now, this series is not crucial in the sense that the Jays are trying to catch the O's. They're still 7.5 games back with a little over 35 games left to go in the season. It doesn't look like the O's are in striking distance, but there are a few teams that are in the grasp of the Toronto Blue Jays, and that's going to be the big key going forward. The schedule starts to lighten up a little bit after this Orioles series, but you got to go ahead and beat the best team in the American League to grab some momentum and truly go on a run after that.
Yeah, the teams that we're competing with the wild card, the Mariners, the Rangers to a degree, the Astros are all winning. Well, besides the Rangers, but the Mariners and Astros are all winning a ton in this upcoming stretch, which we're going to go over in this video. It's going to be huge. Before we do, make sure to hit the subscribe button. We're on the road to 8,000. And Peter, we'll break down the schedule as well as the dominant bullpen. We did it a bit in our live stream yesterday, but let's just first look at the upcoming stretch of games after this series. So, of course, we play the Orioles today and tomorrow, and then we start a weekend series against the Guardians and then the Nationals, and you're going to find a similar pattern here of the schedule being very, very weak for the Toronto Blue Jays, which is going to be very, very beneficial. And that's not to say that the Mariners have necessarily a hard schedule, but I think if we take care of business, we might be good for a wild card run. But this next stretch of games will definitely define their season and define how close they are to the wild card spot in early September.
Yeah, and the Orioles, the next two games are crucial. You got Kevin Gausman on the mound tonight against Jack Flaherty, and then you got Jose Barrios against Dylan Kramer of the Orioles. So you got the advantage in regards of starting pitching, but the biggest strength for this Blue Jay team has been their bullpen, and we touched on it in the live stream yesterday, Nick. When you can send out Jimmy Garcia, a guy who has been a dominant reliever his entire career, in the fifth inning, that just speaks to the depths of your bullpen. And obviously the move didn't work out yesterday. I thought Garcia actually executed a really good pitch. It was just a great swing by Joey Westberg of the Orioles. It just didn't work out for the Blue Jays, but they were able to manage the game in a playoff style yesterday because of the arms that they have. You're sending out Jordan Hicks, a guy who's pumping out 101 consistently on the black in the seventh inning. That's just an embarrassment of riches. And we haven't even mentioned Chad Green. It kind of gets lost in the shuffle, Nick, but Chad Green has a place on this team, and he will make this team, and he'll make this team better as well for the stretch run and for the playoffs, barring any catastrophe that the Jays don't get there. But this bullpen is just so deep. They have a luxury of arms down there and guys that are just having career years. Trevor Richards, Tim Mayza, a lot of guys that maybe you couldn't have relied upon last year are really sticking it to us fans who doubted them before the year.
Yeah, it was about best case scenario you could ask for out of the bullpen. Even they added, Jordan Hicks, who's had a bit of a rocky road with the Blue Jays to start. But looking at the bullpen, this was yesterday against Baltimore, but this has kind of been the story of the whole season here. They went 5 1/3, giving up 2 hits, 1 walk, 7 strikeouts, no runs in yesterday's game. In a game where the starter, Yusei Kikuchi, he kept him in it, but he didn't have his dominant stuff, and that's what you have a bullpen like this for. Such a deep bullpen. I mean, the first guy that came out was Jimmy Garcia, but then you really had Trevor Richards kind of take over there in the 6th inning and really dominate throughout the whole way through. Like you mentioned, Jordan Hicks and everyone there, but having a good bullpen, we discussed this in yesterday's stream, is going to be huge for the Blue Jays going forward. It's huge for any team. You look at the majority of the teams that win in the playoffs and win the World Series. They have dominant bullpens just because of how important it is, especially in the playoffs. We obviously have to get there first, but dominant out of him. Jordan Romano came in there and still getting back from his injury a little bit, but he's pumping absolute gas. And let's discuss a little bit, Peter, the upcoming games. So as of now, we're 2 back at Texas, 1.5 back at Houston, 1 game back at Seattle, virtually 2 games back because we don't have the tiebreaker with Seattle, but we do have the tiebreaker with Houston, and that's kind of what our eyes might be set on here, especially with the upcoming schedule even further. And look how easy it is easing into September there against the Rockies, Athletics, Royals. In theory, we shouldn't lose any of these games. Of course, it's baseball. We're going to lose a couple, but if we take care of business and then the Astros, the Mariners, and the Rangers maybe beat up on each other a little bit, I think we might be able to sneak into that wild card spot because that's the goal right now since we're officially, technically 2 games out of a spot right now.
Yeah, right. And we've been reiterating it all season long, Nick. All you got to do is try to get into the playoffs and then get hot once you're in there. But right now, the Blue Jays are playing some pretty good baseball. Let's not act like they're headed to the World Series or anything, but they are playing probably their best baseball of the year because everything is clicking right now. The defense was good yesterday, apart from a couple of miscues. The base running has been pretty good all year long, and the hitting is really starting to click. And once you have a pitching staff that is performing the way that the Blue Jays one is, you have a chance in any ball game. And that's what wins you games in the playoffs. It's pitching and defense. And those two have been the constants all year long for the Toronto Blue Jays. They just got to keep it going. And if they can chip in a couple of runs every now and then, look at what the difference was yesterday. It was a couple of home runs. Dalton Varsho with the big 2-run home run and Brandon Belt with the big 2-run home run in extra innings. That was ultimately the difference. The O's didn't hit any home runs. They didn't have those moments where the power really shined. And the Blue Jays haven't been world beaters on the offensive end. But when you don't have to string hits together and you could get a couple of big ones at big times like Varsho and Belt did yesterday, then that'll really help you going forward. And after this Orioles series, you got 15 games against teams that are under 500 in a row. So realistically, I could see the Jays going 12 and 15, 12 and 5 in that stretch. 12 and 15 would be detrimental to the rest of the season. But if they go 12 and 3 in those 15 games, I don't think anyone's complaining. We've been talking about the Astros. We've been talking about the Mariners as potentially catching up to them. But the Blue Jays have a 4-game series against the Texas Rangers coming up as well later on in the season. So that could be crucial in deciding who ends up where in the playoff picture. And there's nothing better than August and September baseball, Nick. This is just so exciting.
Yeah, that Ranger series is ultimately going to loom very, very large. On Twitter, people are going crazy about it because especially if the Rangers continue to fall and not win very many games, and they're in a massive
6 in a row.
Yeah, they're in a massive slump right now. So maybe the Astros or whoever jumps them, and then you're looking at the Jays getting in some other squeaky ways. But even looking in, this is a huge series that looms large. So mark your calendar, September 11th, 12th, 13 and 14, huge 4-game series. And if you're the Jays, you need to win 3 to 4 of this series. And that's going to feel like playoff baseball. There's no game 163 anymore, but there's a very good chance that this series could end up being game 163, 4, 5, and 6 going to the crazy part of the season. But the offense, like you said, is heating up right now at a perfect time in theory. Maybe last week would have been a bit of a better time when we had a wild card, lead, but Dalton Varsho is turning into a player that the Jays made a phenomenal trade for, and that's kind of the guy they thought they were getting when they initially traded for him. You have Matt Chapman heating up a little bit after his, really a pretty bad season since, April, really, but he's starting to heat up a little bit, and hopefully Vladdy can get it going. I think ultimately, as much as we discussed, Kevin Kiermaier also had a phenomenal double yesterday, but Vladdy is the big guy that I think is going to take this team far if they want to go deep into the playoffs or even make the playoffs at this point. And he had 3 hits yesterday, a couple singles and a double. He's hitting a for good average lately, but he needs to get some more extra base hits. But any final thoughts before we wrap up and buckle up for tonight's game?
Yeah, I'm just super excited. I can't say it enough, Nick. And yeah, you touched on it. You hit the nail on the head right there. Vladdy's got to get going. And they'll only go as far as Brandon Belt, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., and Bo Bichette take them. And I can't believe I'm including Brandon Belt in that conversation after his horrible start to the season. But he has been everything that the Jays could have hoped for and more. He's got 15 home runs on the season now. He's really tapped into his power lately. And he's come up with some big hits and really working the counts, having some great at-bats. I'm very happy to see him in that 3-hole for the Toronto Blue Jays. But ultimately, Vladdy and Bo are your guys, and they got to start hitting and got to get some extra base hits now because they got to start driving in some runs and bring that big boy power that we're expecting out of them.
Yeah, the Jays are the best pitching in baseball, so if their offense can continue scoring at least some runs and hopefully give Kevin Gausman some run support in tonight's game, it'll be very, very big. And we go for the series win tonight, so hopefully the Jays can take care of business. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
Thanks.